Hello, everyone. Today I am joined by Nynke Eggen, the sustainability strategist at Kuyichi. Very fresh in because she has been here only 1 month, but her knowledge about sustainability in the fashion industry is not new. She has a lot of it. Hi, Nynke. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for that introduction.
You are most welcome. Would love to hear a little bit about you and why Kuyichi.
Yeah, I am indeed a sustainability strategist, and I'm super excited to start also at Kuyichi because they have been doing sustainability since their origins, so for almost 25 years now. So it's
Wow.
really,
So,
yeah,
an
yeah.
actual sustainability pioneer, if you will.
Indeed, it's really like I'm coming into this place where they've already done so much work so extensively and in all these different facets of the business. And my role is to help them to kind of maintain that high standard that they've set, but also to help them to tell that story to a broader audience and to really see how we can put Koyichi a little bit more on a map. Personally, I'm already proud of what they're doing, that I think an even bigger base of people should be aware of what they're doing.
I totally get that. I'm a big fan myself. I mean, I'm wearing Kuyichi here
Yeah.
and here, everywhere. When we travel, I always have like a full set of Kuyichi shirts with me and shorts when we're, in warmer environments because they just work really well and they always look on point. But I want to touch really short on one thing you said, keeping the level of sustainability as high as it has been at Kuyichi. Are you saying that a sustainable company needs to continue to work on, being a sustainable company?
Actually, sustainability, this is an ever changing topic. Also, the work that you do is an ongoing process. The work that you do together with suppliers, like your supplier base may change, but also risks involved in the supply chain may change. And you need to be constantly aware of that, constantly adapt. And maintain your role in that to ensure that there's no new issues coming up that you're unaware of.
Yeah.
So the whole compliance or sustainability work it's quite a lot to maintain in different areas of the business. I think what is also inherently part of businesses that are doing so well in sustainability or that have those high standards is that they're also not content to stay on that level. Of course, the fashion industry or industry in general, how we do it as a society, there's a lot of things that still need to be improved. There's a lot of things that are still like impacting people, impacting environment, impacting animals. Even high standard that Koyichi is at, there is not a level of perfection. So I think the companies that take sustainability seriously, they keep raising the bar for themselves as well.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
It's the same with us at Shop Like Give It Up. We work closely with a lot of brands and we have to continuously look at are all brands still up to a certain level of sustainability practices because our standards rise and you need all the brands to rise with them or even go above what is expected at a minimum baseline. And it's something that you indeed have to continuously work on. It's never done and you can never sit back and chill. It just gets tougher and more demanding. But with that, it does also become better and better. And that's something, that continuously gives me hope and,
Yeah.
makes me happy that together we are able to actually change the industry,
Yeah.
one pair of jeans at a time.
Yes, indeed.
And please tell me a little bit about Kuyichi. What makes them stand out from all the other jeans brands?
Yeah, actually, what I mentioned is that their standards are so high and so elaborate. So I was really surprised. I mean, I knew Zoe, who was the previous CR manager here at Kuyichi. We sometimes had conversations about her role and about like what it is that she is working on, and I was always very impressed that she got the backing by management or the CEO to work on these like really deep dive topics into the supply chain, for example, really changing things. There was like not even a question of working on those topics. And for me, that's really special to hear. And I work with a lot of different brands and there's all these different levels of commitment, of course. But for me, this is really refreshing to see that they are taking it so seriously. And then diving into what it is that they're actually doing is that they are indeed on all of these different pillars that matter within a fashion brand. So, for example, they work with, I think right now the score is 79% preferred fibers. So that means that the materials that they select for their products are coming from this pre-approved pool of materials that have a better impact versus conventional materials.
And how do we decide that it is better than conventional?
Yeah, it's based on industry standards, and those are all based on LCA data, so life cycle assessment data, to compare the water usage, the climate impact, all of these different areas. So it's really based on industry standards, selecting the better material sources, so to say. So it's 79% of the collection. I don't know any brand. I mean, of course, I don't know all the brands, but I don't know any brand that has it up to 79%. And then they don't stop there. They also ensure that they have the right certifications for the fabrics, like GUTS, for example. But also because it's denim, so it's not just a fabric that is dyed. There's also washes involved, and the dyeing process itself also has quite a high impact. But they really work with all these different suppliers together to see how they can lessen that impact as much as they can.
Do you have an example of how one would be able to lessen the impact of dyeing jeans?
Yeah, so there is a choice that you can make between liquid denim and powder denim, for example.
Okay.
And liquid denim has a lower impact than powder denim. And we also use one tool. This is an AEM score, which scores the impact of the
What
wash.
does it stand for?
It stands for Environmental Impact Measurement. So this is a system that is developed specifically to measure the impact of denim washes, because, well, you have, of course, the indigo dyeing process, but then through the washing process, you get the worn-in look that all of the denim had, of course. But there's impact in that process as well, and water impact, for example, but also energy that is used. There's heat involved, and so we really work together with also the suppliers to measure that impact, and to ensure that we stay below a certain level to reduce the impact. So all of these different environmental impacts are being covered, but this is just the environmental part. So it goes beyond materials and processes. So we are also a Fair Wear Foundation leader, which means that we work with our suppliers, the manufacturers that make the garments that we produce, to improve their working conditions. Yeah, getting a leader status at Fair Wear Foundation means that you're really working on a lot of different topics that go deeper than maintaining compliance level. And of course, then the way that Kuyichi approaches business, they're really trying to do that in a responsible way as well. So, for example, there's no seasonal sale. And the products that we create, we really try to make them timeless and high quality so that they really can last for a long time. But also things like not participating in Black Friday, of course, that's coming up now.
Yeah, whilst recording this interview, it's tomorrow.
For years already, they've not participated in giving discounts to encourage more purchases, but instead the items that are sold on that day, so the revenue that is coming from that, we donate a percentage to a good cause. And this time it's Shelter Suit that we are donating it to, which I think is a really cool
That's
one.
great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for explaining. Talking about denim is made from cotton. And I was wondering, what type of cotton do you use?
All of the types except for conventional. Yeah. So actually, for many years now, I think almost 10 years, they have a organic cotton only policy, meaning that all the cotton that is used is organic cotton. But we've expanded that a little bit because we also recognize like organic cotton isn't the only way that is right. So we've also implemented different types of cotton. So of course, post and pre-consumer recycled cotton is part of the cotton that we use, but also cotton in conversion, which is kind of the in-between phase for a farmer who is switching from conventional to organic. They have a 3-year period that they need to bridge, that they cannot claim organic yet. They cannot be certified yet because, well, all of those pesticides, etc., they need to leave the soil, and there's a lot of different rules involved there. But they have this awkward phase of 3 years where they cannot yet charge the organic cotton premium for the cotton, but they are already operating in that set of rules. So they're doing a lot of work, they're taking a lot of risks, and they are also risking that their yield goes down, for example. So we feel it's very important to support farmers in that transition period and make sure that they do still have a buyer for their materials.
So if I can summarize, these farmers who want to grow organic cotton instead of regular cotton, they have a transition period of 3 years, and within those 3 years, their yield will likely go down because pesticides keep the pests away, and so their yield goes down, but they cannot compensate with a higher price, so their income goes down, which will make their life way harder, which is, of course, a big problem and a big reason probably that a lot of cotton farmers don't transition towards organic cotton, which makes you doing this cotton inversion thing basically offering them an alternative.
Yeah, and that's also why we feel like if you really want to work on systemic change, you need to support all the phases of that. And you really need to think realistically about it. Like, what does it mean for the farmers? Not just this mindset of, oh no, we need to use organic cotton only because it has this stamp. I don't think that's the answer to really change things. That's really a top-down approach. And we believe more in a let's do it all together kind of approach.
And how is it with the cotton conversion? Do you use it already in your products?
Yeah, we do. And also since last year, we also included regenerative cotton, which I
Okay.
personally, I'm really a big fan of this material. I saw the documentary a couple of years ago, Kiss the Ground, which was about regenerative agriculture. And I was really amazed by the story. Of course, it portrayed this whole like beautiful picture of nature. But what really stood out to me is that conventional farming and even conventional organic cotton farming, the way that it's farmed, it still sort of depletes the soil. And what regenerative farming does is it really creates a balanced ecosystem and a healthy soil. It's a big thing for protecting and preserving and even like getting biodiversity back into natural habitats. But the second main thing that stands out to me is that healthy soil absorbs carbon from the atmosphere, while depleted soil is dry and carbon just like bounces back up in the atmosphere. So if we want to really seriously work on mitigating climate change, this is, in my mind, a really important thing to invest in and to make grow as well.
I mean, cotton is like the second biggest crop in the world. And if we would be able to all transition that to regenerative, then we would have a lot of farmland absorbing CO2 emissions instead of letting them bounce back and creating more global warming, which makes a lot of sense. I was wondering though, it's really hard to figure out where your cotton comes from exactly. How does Kuyichi go about that?
Yeah, that's a good one. This is one of the main reasons that we also work with certified materials, so the GUTS
Okay.
certification or OCS. And this is to help us to trace it back to the country of origin. So we can look on the certificates and we can see where the raw material is originating from. But still, this is quite a general picture for us.
You said country, right? Not necessarily which farmer or which region.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that is really notoriously hard to get information from. So we have complete supply chain transparency on tier 1 and tier 2. Now,
What does tier 1, tier 2 mean?
good question. So tier 1 is the manufacturers that produce the actual garments. So
Okay.
where fabric is cut and where the garments are created. Tier 2 are the fabric and trim suppliers. Tier 3 are the yarn spinners.
Okay. Getting
They
closer.
Yeah, exactly. And then tier 4 are the actual farms.
Okay.
So tier 1 and tier 2, we have got covered. Tier 3, mostly.
Okay.
And we know some of our tier 4. So there's, for example, one denim supplier that we work with who have a fully integrated system. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 is all
Wow.
in their own facility, which is quite special. And they have their own cotton fields where they grow cotton in both organic and regenerative way. Some members of the team have also visited and like stood on the ground. So that's really cool. But
Wow. Yeah, that is really cool.
yeah, it's not a common practice at all. So yeah, we're really grateful to work with them.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you know what makes it so hard to actually find out these tier 4, the farmers basically? Is that something that the industry hides from brands? Is the data just not registered anywhere so you cannot easily find out?
There's different reasons. So one of them is that the further down the chain you go, the more informal it is. So it's more like people doing deals, for example, and not having all of these computer systems. I mean, a farmer has a farm, right? So in a lot of countries, it's a completely different way of working. So
Yeah,
that's
they don't harvest data, they harvest cotton, for
indeed.
instance.
Yes, exactly. So, and of course, that's one portion of it. But another portion is also that the fashion supply chains have been very opaque traditionally. So, really secretive about their suppliers, because otherwise, what makes you not go around me and like go directly to my source, for example? And I think this is changing a lot. Also, there's agreements that you can make, there's like relationships that you can build, there's like, all these things that you can do to work around it, but inherently it's still there. And then, of course, also it can be complicated. It's not necessarily a one-way trip. So, like the farm goes to the yarn supplier goes to the fabric mill goes to the CMT factory where the products are made. It
What
can
does
be
CMC stand for?
cut, make, trim. So they cut the fabrics, they make the products, and they trim they put the zippers on it, etc. So it's not necessarily that you have a one supplier supplies the other one, but it can be 5 farms, or it can be 80 farms, or it can be, it can be all these different suppliers from one tier supplying another tier. Yeah, it's quite a web sometimes. So that's another part of it, that it's not as straightforward as you might think.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And talking about challenges, what challenge does Kuyichi have at this particular point in time when it comes to cotton?
I would say one thing is for sure price, because of course there is a premium to pay if you want to source materials that are either certified organic or have a higher level of traceability. It really comes with price, and so that also puts strain on the margins, because we still want to create an affordable product. So that's always a challenge. Another one is the certification work, so the paperwork.
Is that something that keeps on coming? Or is that a thing you do once?
No, it's absolutely not a thing you do once. So every style you develop and you produce and you sell needs to have that chain of custody certification with it. So all of the steps in the supply chain for every style that you produce need to follow the same steps, and you need to have all of the paperwork in order, because if you miss a step, then who says there wasn't another input used, for example? So you really need to be able to track the material from the source until the end, and that requires a lot of extra paperwork, both for us as a brand, but also for all of our suppliers.
That sounds like a lot of work. And is there a particular organization that requires this documentation of these steps?
The certifications are owned by a certain company, and they work together with the certifying bodies, or like third-party organizations that assess whether you're taking the right steps. So every year, as well, you need to be recertified, and you need to show that the paper trail, and you need to make sure that everything is in order, and you get checked on that, and then you can hold the certification for another year. But throughout the year, you need to make sure that all of those steps are followed.
So you're always proving basically yourself if you are worthy of a certain certification. And talking about all these things, there's a lot of things in a lot of areas that, are not perfect in this industry particularly. And you cannot do everything perfectly, right? That's impossible. You can do your best to do things as well as you can. But if you had to choose, like, what certain challenge would you always prioritize to tackle when it comes to cotton? What things are, more important to Kuyichi specifically?
Yeah, I think the main thing to prioritize would be the origin of the raw material. So the kind of raw material in terms of environmental impact. So it's very simple actually. So prioritizing all of the other preferred cotton types above conventional cotton. So I think that is really the main choice, to never use conventional cotton, because there's just so much harm, both environmentally and socially. And by no means we say that the other fibers or the other cotton raw material sources are free from any, impacts. They're not. There's no perfect supply chain that exists yet. But there is a lot of evidence, like in terms of data, that we can rely on, that it is indeed better, a lot better than conventional. So that's really our main no-brainer, actually, the one decision that we will never depart from. And indeed, we cannot do everything perfectly, but we try to do as much as we can in the best way we can. That means like having certification in place as much as possible. And also, going beyond it. So also in terms of the processes that are then used to make that raw material into a fabric, and in the end into a product, that all of those steps are being monitored, and like that we try to stay below a certain line and try to like go even further down with the impact.
That's amazing. What claim about cotton would you never make because it wouldn't be considered greenwashing? To give you an example, a lot of people have been saying that organic cotton always needs less water than regular cotton, which of course is not necessarily true, because regular cotton can grow in a very wet area, for instance, where you wouldn't have to irrigate as much. Like in that realm, what type of, claim would you never make?
Yeah, good one. I think one big misconception that I would never say about cotton is that because it's a natural fiber, that it's better. Just because it's natural doesn't mean that it doesn't have any impact. So what I said before, that all of these steps that are involved in making a product out of a raw material, all of these require inputs in terms of energy, water, but also chemicals. And chemicals, they also change the material that it is. So in the end, even though the origin may come from organic regenerative cotton, the purest kind that you could find. If the processes after add on chemicals that are not monitored, but in general, like there's no products existing today that no chemicals at all are added. Those chemicals make it not a perfect clean material anymore. That's kind of a misconception that people have, that because the origin is natural, we're not wearing the cotton that is being plucked from the fields. So there's all these steps involved in between that make it less of a natural product.
I love that you touched on this. I had this one quote. Here it is. This is from the book Unraveled. It says, fabrics can be comprised of 28% chemicals by weight, and that's only if they're made of 100% natural fibers. Synthetic fibers have even greater concentrations. So, wow.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And
that's a
also,
lot.
yeah, and I also like started learning from Kuyichi as well. Like they have one manufacturer that they work with who is really innovative in the space of the treatments that are done to the fibers that are used. And I've learned that in the process of making the fibers ready to be woven into a material, cotton itself is actually not strong enough to withstand that type of pressure and friction of like the industrial weaving process. So it's treated with a super thin layer of plastic to make
Is
it
this always the case?
generally. So I cannot tell, I don't know all of the processes, but this is something that is usually done in denim manufacturing.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, so this is something that is later then removed with another batch of like chemicals. So it's just needed in this one stage in the manufacturing process. We work together actually with the partner Candiani, and they have created a mycelium-based alternative for this. So this is really removing the plastics even from that process in the manufacturing process.
The fungi, if you will, they protect the fragile yarns, the fabric, and we would not need any plastic to get it through the weaving process.
Exactly. And that's actually one of the processes that was done on the jacket that I selected.
Jackets. Okay, let's talk jackets. I mean, we have been talking a lot about how to make amazing pieces, but what do they look like? Well, this is one of them. Why is
Yes,
this one of your favorite pieces?
because I think it's super cool. Yeah, I really like it. The washing as well is really like it's a raw denim.
What makes raw denim different from other denim?
Raw denim is kind of unwashed. All of the washes that have been done usually to give that worn-in look. That hasn't happened here. So this is really more like shiny fabric as well. So it feels like it's really bright new. And then when you start wearing it, you start wearing it in. And this is actually how original denim was made before we invented all of these industrial washing processes. This is what denim would be like. So back in the day, like, I don't know, the 70s or something, this is how you would wear your denim and how you would like get your own personal worn out pattern on clothes. So that's,
Am I correct in understanding that if raw denim, that you don't have the washing process, which would make this more sustainable?
yeah, actually, you skip part of the impact indeed. Yeah.
That's actually really nice. So it starts to fade a little bit based on how you wear it. So
Yeah,
it becomes it gets like a very unique look.
exactly. Yeah, it does. Over the years, it wears in.
Oh, it is more sustainable and it's more unique. So yeah, that's a lot
Yeah.
of reasons to actually go for some raw denim then. Super nice. It's a great piece. And you also chose some other items. You chose a knit.
Yeah. Also, 100% organic cotton knits that we produced. I just think it's really nice. And I also like under the denim jacket, I can picture it with like a dark denim jeans as well, like double denim look, but then autumn edition.
Yeah, it feels very relevant for the current temperature here in the Netherlands where we are now. All right, last item. We have a Lucy jeans. So what's up with Lucy?
Lucy is made of regenerative cotton, which is, of course, my favorite, as I already mentioned. So that is for me, yeah, really cool. And also, I really love the styling of it, the white leg. I
Yeah,
wear it a lot, actually. Here also, you see that it has a vegan patch. So all of the Kuyichi jeans,
nice.
they don't have a leather patch, which is a weird thing for me, like to think about if you the whole entire denim industry uses leather patches, right? But why would you use leather for something that doesn't need to be leather?
I know. As a vegan company, we really appreciate it.
And I think for a lot of people, it matters a lot to do that. And also, a lot of companies argue that it's a leftover material, but in the end, I don't buy that. I mean, if you think of all of the denims that are being produced in the world, That's one big piece of leather. That's, of course, that's not just leftover material. So
It's not. By the way, it also looks quite raw. Is it also raw?
no,
Or is
this
it
one,
just very dark washing?
yeah, this is just a really dark wash. Yeah.
That's interesting. Can you like notice the difference by looking at it?
Yeah, you really see it if you have like the two fabrics together, you really see the difference. So the raw one is, as I said, a little bit more shiny, and this is a little bit more matte.
Okay.
But it is indeed
Oh, it's
it's
more shiny.
yeah, 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 yeah.
All right. Well, Nynke, thanks so much for talking us through the process of Kuyichi and showing us your favorites. I've learned a lot again
Thank
by
you.
talking to you. So thanks so much, and I'm wishing you a lovely day.
Yeah, you too. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.